Hi, my name is Jeff Turner. I'm one of the co-founders of Tangilla, an association management platform built specifically for realtor associations. And we're here at the beautiful Austin Board of Realtors headquarters with their CEO, Emily Chenevert. We're going to be talking today a little bit about the process that they took with T360. We'll be joined by Jack Miller in a little bit, and how life has been since they've transitioned over to Tangilla. She's getting a lot of phone calls from associations around the country. We thought this might be a way to cut down that volume a little bit. So we hope you enjoy the session. So Emily.
Jeff.
What prompted you to even start the search for a new association management platform?
2 previous failures in a project just like this. I mean, the truth is we have been living on a legacy system that was not meeting our needs, that we knew wasn't meeting our needs for a long time. Yeah. We had tried to make transitions like this before and had not done it well. But we knew that every aspect of the business that we wanted to move forward was contingent upon having a proper operating system at our core. And we needed to find the right partner for that and then make that transition no matter how painful it was going to be. You
talked a little bit about those failed transitions last night at dinner, probably more colorfully than you're willing to talk about them here today. But
oh, yeah.
What was it about those previous attempts that went awry?
Yeah, the one main factor and critical failure both times was an inability to understand NERDS. So NERDS is also its own antiquated and legacy system that has a unique set of sort of documentation about what it is or isn't. But it's critical path to anybody that operates in organized real estate because it is the way in which we manage our membership and really is at the core of that 3-way agreement that exists between associations at all levels. In both cases, the partners could not adapt to understanding that legacy system, could not integrate with it properly. Just they couldn't get over that hump. And one of the first things I said to you was, if you've cracked NERDS, I don't care if you've got the thing built or not, we're good.
That's good because we didn't have it built yet.
Yeah, but you had cracked NERDS, which was key.
Well, so was that the most important consideration when you were thinking about a new AMS?
Sadly, it was a very important one. And I say sadly because it's so not impactful when it comes to the rest of our business. But we knew that it had to be right so that the rest of this transition could happen properly. The other aspect of that was a challenge with the previous failures and was not a challenge this time as much is working with the other vendors and partners that are a part of our ecosystem, yeah. MLS partners, key vendors, all just the different folks that we have to integrate with to properly provision service out to our members.
Is that difficulty mostly technical or is it will?
Oh, it's political somewhat. It can be will. It is sometimes technical. I mean, those are lots of different systems that have their own intricacies, their own legacy aspects of how they operate. Not every vendor and partner that we work with is API friendly, which makes it really difficult to properly integrate with them or achieve a smoother alignment between your AMS system and whatever system you're accessing. And motivating them to get involved in one association or one MLS's project when they've got 50 others to serve up today is challenging. And I can't blame them for that.
Yeah, so the fact that Tangilla is API first, meaning if you see it in Tangilla, an API exists.
Right.
We build on top of it. That was
critical.
It was critical. What were other must-have things for you?
I'll say this about the API thing too. When we were first looking for a partner, we didn't think we'd find one partner to do all of the things that we wanted to do. And I can remember telling you, you need to properly integrate with SharpSpring because that's our communications platform. You're never going to replace that. And it was, clearly the challenge put forth. You attempted and achieved it, but. The API aspect of Tangilla was really critical because we were thinking in an ecosystem format, not a one and done.
Right.
Okay, now you asked me another question.
Yeah, what were the other must-have features? What else was it?
Yeah, it being cloud-based, we didn't want to host it on servers any longer, so that there was proper redundancy and proper access. Certainly as we were building it through a pandemic, that had become very apparently needed. We wanted a system that was intuitive, that was going to continue to improve. We had been on a platform that had not changed in a decade. which was insane. Not only in terms of its user interface and just it looking and feeling old, it also just had not improved. There was no opportunity to do better. And I knew that you guys were setting out to have a system that will always change, that will always be tweaked, that will always be doing better each and every day. And that was important for us because that's how we want to operate.
What was your biggest fear then in doing this transition? And
well, failing again.
well, aside from just the basic, this isn't going to work again.
Yeah.
What was your biggest fear in this transition? And did any of those fears materialize?
There were probably two fears. One was on a soft side aspect. I worried about my staff's ability to feel connected to the project, that it was really such an opportunity for us to do something so collectively in a way that we don't usually get to do things. I mean, it's not very often that one big rock touches 55 people in the way that your AMS system does.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to properly leverage the opportunity that was very aligning, very much a North Star for my team. And that materialized properly. I think every one of us was excited when the thing launched. I'll tell you something else is we brought our board along pretty in-depth in these conversations.
How did you manage those conversations with the board? Because to me, that's probably one of the most interesting aspects of this, the board's willingness to commit to a project with a vendor that hadn't actually built the software yet.
Yeah, we were not as transparent about how far along you were in that project, perhaps, but I mean, they knew, but they didn't know.
Yeah.
But the way that I manage my board is one of them understanding our business and how could they not make this investment if they understand our business, they understand how critical the AMS system is to how we operate. That was the first thing, just teeing up for them that this thing touches literally every aspect of our business. There were pain points that were specific to them as members, their portal experience, their inability to bundle classes, the limitations of the previous systems, things like that. So they had their own understanding of it, but I worked really hard for them to understand our use of the system too. In part because it's important for them to know that we work hard and what we do and how we do it makes them feel more connected to the purpose of the organization. But also because they were going to get asked to make a big financial investment and a multi-year commitment to a new partner, and I wanted them to feel comfortable with that. So we were super transparent to the end that when it launched, they were crying happy tears as much as we were, which was powerful.
That's
and it
awesome.
Felt good for them to be that excited about this type of aspect of our business.
Yeah, it was good to meet your board members yesterday. It really was, and I was actually really thrilled by their response. But let's go back to you bringing your team along through this process. We did this entire project during a pandemic. Now,
we did.
Working virtually is not new to the Tangilla founders.
Yeah.
Two of my partners, Phil Kells, David King, they're in Australia. Mm-hmm. We have always worked virtually, so it wasn't new for us. Did the fact that we were already used to that virtual project management help in this situation?
I mean, it probably did. We were so forced into the position that we were in as a globe that I don't know that was as much a challenge as I think it could have been. I will say this, and the executive members of my team have said this multiple times, I don't know that we could have done this not in a pandemic. We were so plugged in to our workspaces at home, so just strung out, it was so uninterrupted in a way that would not have been the same if we had been in the office. The Aussies are great, but they wake up in the afternoon when we're tail end of our day, and we're rolling then into the evenings with them sometimes, and that flexibility wouldn't have been there if Kalea was commuting an hour back and forth to the office. So
very good point.
In some ways, it was really a lucky hand dealt that was the timing of this project.
Well, let's talk about the polar vortex a little bit, because many people probably don't realize we launched Tangilla. We were attempting to launch Tangilla without any water or power for the vast majority of your staff.
Yeah.
We don't need to spend a lot of time
Yeah,
on
let
it.
me not tick like from the PTSD of that experience. But yeah, I mean, Texas is special in every way. One of the ways in which it is special is that it manages its own electric grid, and that grid failed for a week.
Yeah, but in some ways that was helpful to us because we were pushing hard
Yeah.
with third-party vendors as well, making certain that certain portions of this were working properly. It actually bought us a little extra time to double test some things to make certain things were working. Yeah.
The other thing it did is, I mean, we had to, and I don't think people always understand this part of the transition, you've got to stop service for a period of time to cut over. And so you're not serving members for a period of time. We got an extra week of not serving members when they didn't need to be served and didn't expect to be served because nobody had power or water.
Yeah,
that was an incredible gift.
It really gave us a good chance to just play with the data a little bit more, make certain everything was set, and then when we flipped the switch, it just worked.
Yeah. Now, I won't ever forget that, on a Monday in which my house was 40 degrees because there was no power and there was no water, I walked around the house screaming, I'm going to lose my job. We're launching an AMS system in a polar vortex. I don't know what I'm going to do. It was excruciating from our side because we didn't have cell service. We didn't know what was going on. And I'd get power for a half hour every afternoon and immediately call Phil Kells and ask him what was happening with my AMS system. And he was really lovely to, it sort of calmed everything every afternoon.
Yeah. Well, knowing what you know now, aside from the polar vortex, which you have no control over, what would you do differently?
I mean, I want to say more time, but the truth is, I don't know that more time would have gotten us that much farther along. We've talked back and forth about that. Would more time have been better, or would that have made it worse because you're just spending more time, frankly, in the legacy system?
Yeah.
We needed to just launch. You guys made that clear to us. Even when we were uncomfortable, we still wanted to just bite the bullet and do it.
Yeah, but you had to be receptive to that pushing.
Yeah.
As a partner with you and as a vendor, we really are subject to your will. We can push as hard as we want, but if in the end you come back to us and say, no, well, we don't have a lot of options there.
Yeah.
How did you move the staff? Because we've talked about this a lot. The culture change that might be required from a shift as big as this one is probably the hardest thing to manage. How did the speed of this play into your ability to manage their expectations and manage the shift you were trying to make in the way they thought?
Well, I think some of that staff had experienced the failures before, so the short runway meant that we were getting it done and they were seeing progress, whereas they'd spent years on failure before. Yeah. So there was a little bit of like proof in the pudding for those guys. That was not the case for all of the staff. There were lots of staff who had never experienced something like this, and they were, white knuckling it through this experience with us. But, I think keeping them aligned and keeping their expectations appropriate was to work through it transparently. We tried hard to talk real talk about what it was going to be. Hey guys, we're going to launch a system. It's not going to be at 100%. You're going to be fine. This is what it's going to be. And I have found that they'll adhere to any expectation if I just set it properly. If I try to, say everything's going to be great and it's sunshine and kittens and it's not, that's when things go south. So we try really hard to just tell it like it is, to be transparent about what the process was going to be like. We were transparent about where the pain points were going to be. Yeah. The discovery process was brutal. My staff worked all day and then into the night with yours, and that was hard.
Jack's going to talk to you a little bit about the, business requirements document that you put together, which was, quite frankly, the entire contract was built around the definitions in that business requirement document.
Right.
How helpful was it to have that set in place as you managed expectations, and how did it allow you to say, these are the things we need, at launch, and these are the nice to haves.
Yeah, I mean, it was critical. Just yesterday, one of my staff members asked you for something, and I said, I don't recall that was documented anywhere.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was not. It will be moving forward, apparently. But it was that shared anchor, that shared understanding of what we're really doing.
Isn't that where most of these relationships break down? The disconnect between the expectations and of what you think is going to be delivered, and the expectations of what the product thinks is going to be delivered.
Yeah, I think that's one of the places that they break down. They tend to just break down through very poor communication overall.
Well, it's probably a good segue. What advice would you give to an association that's thinking about going through this kind of a process?
Going through it at all, the advice, like not vendor agnostic, the advice I give is to really first understand your current processes so that you can figure out what you're really changing. I would bet that almost association in this country has like, a Karen. And Karen does things the way that she's always done them. And in her head, she knows exactly how it works. It's never been documented. Nobody else knows how Karen does it, but Karen knows what she does. And the problem with that is that when you go to change that thing, Karen's first of all going to feel very vulnerable and insecure about the fact that you're changing what only she knows.
And if you're watching this and your name is Karen,
Yeah.
just, please don't be offended.
No, Karen's great. She's good at what she does,
Yeah,
but nobody
absolutely.
else understands it.
Yeah.
And that's so bad for your business.
Getting that information out of someone's head and
Yes.
into a document that
Is
can
good
actually
for
be
you
validated.
even if you're not going to transition your AMS, but critical if you're going to do this transition.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about Tangilla for a little bit.
Okay.
You've been on the Tangilla platform now, really on it,
Yeah.
for about 3 months.
I was trying to think about, yeah.
Yeah, we launched Forms in a limited sense back in October of 2020, but February 22nd was really the first day. So we're 3 months in.
Yeah.
What's the experience been like?
It's been great. We are...
Now, pretend I'm not sitting here and answer that
Yeah,
question.
no, I tell people that. Okay. That is the truth. It was great. It's been great. It's been smooth. I think it's smoother than I expected. Sure, there were bugs. There are bugs. There are things that didn't work exactly as we had thought they would. Integration points that weren't as smooth as they could be occasionally.
Details of processes that are
It's just
sort of
stuff
abstract.
you're not going to uncover until you're in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody who's done an MLS conversion could speak to that type of experience, but far smoother than I expected. We also turned around and billed, 16,000 people a month after we launched the thing.
It was 2 weeks later.
Yeah, which was 2 weeks, yeah. Which was, lofty, but we did it. And that when it billed properly and I knew that we were going to get through that part of our business cycle, I knew we were good. If you can bill, get the payments in, it's clean, clean, clean. Everybody's got their service provision properly. Everybody's, that billing process is the most complex and the largest volume of transaction that's going to occur in the system at any given time. So to do it so quickly was a challenge, but also really beneficial in terms of our confidence in the system.
What's the biggest change to the organization? Because the platform really is central to how you work. What's the biggest change that it's brought to the organization?
From an operational and cultural standpoint, the inability to tinker because it is automated has completely shifted how we work and the things that we can do or not do. That's a good thing. It was a challenging thing, frankly. I mean, we used to be able to manually...
Even good change is hard to manage.
Yeah, I mean, we would manually override, manually do whatever needed to be done, coddle members by giving them exactly what they wanted when they wanted it. This system doesn't do that because it is built on automation that requires standardization in your policy, requires you to adhere to timelines and dates and triggers, and all of those things only work if you'll really stand up with your policy. So that was a shift.
From my perspective, your staff has adapted very well to that change. What's been the benefit of the amount of process automation that's been brought into the organization?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the efficiency of it is significant. That people are not manually doing the things that are now automated is the most obvious shift. But The other thing is, and I talk with the member support staff about this, they sometimes, especially in the beginning, felt more vulnerable that they could not tinker, that they could not change something for a member. You know, they're on that frontline phone
Is
call.
that a fear of the unknown? Like they don't know how
It's like
done,
you're on
or-
the frontline phone call, somebody's yelling at you, and you're saying, my system does not override. You
Right.
know, like that's a challenging position. But what I said to them is, that's a really freeing position too. When it's built in and baked into the system and your license goes south and it's not active anymore, you don't have service, it's a pretty rational explanation. Like, you don't have a license, you don't have service, right?
Yeah.
But because we'd never managed with such hard deadlines or hard guardrails around those things before, empowering them to have language around that was really critical to them embracing the change.
And how have the members responded to that? And to, I know not everybody's going to take advantage of the self-serve nature of the Tangilla portal, but how have members responded to the potential of just doing these things themselves without having to call someone?
You know, one of the reasons I think that members don't always take advantage of the self-serve is that it literally doesn't exist in their business anywhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no other aspect of their business that's operating at that type of efficiency or that caliber. Certainly no other association in MLS is operating that way, because yours is the only system that is built that way today. So you know, I think that that's part of, like, the mind shift will come for them when they realize that they should have that expectation of all of their businesses and every aspect of their partnership.
We obviously agree. You know, we started this process on the form side because part of what we uncovered in the discovery that we did on top of the business requirements was that up to 20-25% of your staff's time was spent managing membership applications and validating data. I mean, if you had to guess off the top here, what's the average amount of time that it takes from the time that a member finishes their application to they are provisioned in the MLS, their account is set up, and they can log into their account?
Like minutes. I mean, it's some sick number. It's like 3 minutes or something insane. The first time we ever saw it happen, I thought Stan Martin was going to jump out of his skin because he just like could not believe that MLS service had been actually provisioned through an automated process that no staff member touched. It was like truly shocking.
There has to be an improved member experience as a part of that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely especially that onboarding new member application form process is so much smoother, so much more transparent to the member. The form is just built more intuitively. It speaks to the value of the association membership that they're purchasing, allowed us opportunity to showcase ourselves as a professional organization in a better way. I mean, what a beautiful way to start your relationship with your member, setting that type of expectation for them about who you are. Whereas you're going to, you know, Joe Schmo's association down the street, and they're handed a paper form. It's ludicrous. Like, no other business is operating that way. So I feel like it's brand centric too, right? Yeah. To like set your bar high and exhibit yourself in that first interaction with your member in that way is really important.
I love that. What do you wish Tangilla did better?
I mean, I could probably get a list from my staff if needed, but
I think it's important that people hear this.
I know. I mean, it's hard.
What do you wish we did better?
It's hard for me to answer because so much has changed already. I think we're still just like coming up for air and embracing what exists today. I mean, there are little things we would tweak, sure, and there are processes that we've learned things about as we've launched, but there's not like a big thing missing for us right now. It just has solved more problems than it's created, for sure.
Great. I'm going to remember that when you call me next week.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to send you the list. Don't worry.
Well, okay. Then what's your favorite thing about Tangilla?
My favorite thing is that I can operate in it. So you know, but that like anybody could. Oh, and to be clear, there was no training for our staff.
Yeah.
We,
We
like,
get that question a lot. What's your
at
training?
best,
Yeah.
like a 4-hour training a day before a polar vortex or something crazy like that is what we did. But they literally just got in the system and started working because it's intuitive.
I think we said to you, because you asked us that as we were going through this process, talk to us about training. We're like, who trained you on how to use Google? Like, who trained you on how to use Facebook?
Yeah, we didn't get
it. You shouldn't have to be trained on a well-designed modern system. That was our thinking.
Now it's well documented. Your help documentation is valuable. You will train and have been, able to show up for the staff if they need that. But the truth is, I was kidding, but I like that I can get in the system and do what my staff can do. And I do that because I think it's important that they understand that, every staff member in this organization needs to be able to operate at this like minimum standard of working in the systems that we have. It's not like that in these other legacy systems.
Yeah.
They require such niche knowledge about how they work or such niche knowledge about your business because the rules aren't built into them that it was like I'd get lost in there and couldn't do what my staff did. And I don't like feeling disconnected from them in that way.
Well, I've said this to you. I think, this is the first time we've seen each other face to face and throughout the entire process. And
Yeah.
At lunch the other day, you probably remember, I forced you to look me in the eyes so that I could tell you how wonderful it was to have you as a partner.
Thank you.
And I want it to be public. I really want to thank you for trusting us. It's a big deal. And it means a lot.
And I appreciate that. I can't imagine doing this in a different way. I think back, like, how crazy were we to have made this investment? There was not a time that we were like, well, maybe we shouldn't. We were just, I am an intuitive leader. Intuitively, you were the people that I wanted to work with. I knew that. I knew that you had the right understanding of our business, at the legacy aspects of our business, the partners that we were going to have to work with, and all of that played out as we expected. And that's not a sales pitch for Tangilla as much as it's a sales pitch for you guys as people. And I do think that this kind of work is it can be emotional. It can be, it's exhausting. It's hard work. Yeah. I don't want anybody to think that it's like, going to be easy, because it's not. But doing it with people you like is way more fun.
Well, I'm glad you like me.
I do still like you. There were some moments. But
We're going to take a quick break, and then Jack Miller from T360 is going to talk to you about, the process that led up to this. But thank you so much for making this process available to us.
You bet. And if people want to Zoom still, I'll Zoom with them about Tangilla, tell all the dirty laundry.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily.
You bet.
Well, Emily, tell me a little bit about how you decided to do this project, because we had been in conversations about your member system, but talk to us a little bit about the background of why you decided to do it.
Yeah, the truth is it was years and years in the making for us to make this type of transition. And very candidly, ABoR had attempted multiple times to make a transition like this, and it had failed under previous leadership. So we knew for a long time that the infrastructure we were working on was not supporting our needs, our ability to serve our members well, and certainly was not moving our ball forward in terms of being able to do innovative things and free up staff time to think differently about our business. And so we knew we were going to make this investment and knew that we needed to do it right.
Mm-hmm. Well, talk to me about why you decided to reach out to our company at T360 to help with the project. Why did you do that, and what did you think you would get out of working with us?
Yeah, the intention really was to do a full landscape review of not just those legacy providers that are in industry and in market today, but also the potential for a provider outside of our industry or outside of what we consider the market to be. We, number one, didn't have the bandwidth to do that properly, but a third set of eyes, and certainly one outside of your day-to-day operations, gave a good structure for us to kind of truly and properly evaluate what options were available to us.
Yeah, and talk to me about what did you want to get out of that process from us? What were the things you were specifically wanting?
Yeah, two main things. One was a true consensus around our business requirements. So part of that work is not just us saying what we need, but you facilitating the kind of triage that happens within the staff too. Everybody wants, what they want on the Christmas tree.
Yes.
And that would be great, but then there are the things that you have to have. You guys really helped us draw the line and discern what was needed and required versus the things that would be nice to have. So that true business requirements documentation was the first deliverable. The second was the landscape. What are the options? How do they stack up against each other? How well do they meet against those business requirements that you documented for us? And ultimately, which platform is going to be best?
So I've got a follow-up to that, which is, you talked about kind of drawing some lines within the staff and saying what we can do, what we can't do.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how did your staff engage with that, or how did that work internally?
Yeah, so one of the things that was most critical with this project, as far as I was concerned, in terms of the leadership and the operations of this transition, was that it be collaborative. It was just paramount that every staff member feel like they had some connection to this project because it touches every aspect of our business. So that began truly with this business requirements documentation. Us getting around the table, really talking through how do we do things today, how could we do them better, what do we want to be doing that we're not doing, and just thinking creatively without the top on the box about what business could look like under a new set of systems.
Got it. So, and that led to, and we did produce those deliverables working with your team and got into the selection process. So talk to me a little bit about the selection process. How did the pre-work we did and how did that process unfold, and kind of give us a little feedback on how that went?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I think you in some ways affirmed what we felt we knew about the legacy systems in the industry. That was both disappointing and what we expected.
Right.
We needed to do that. I think we needed to check the box on having full freight discovered against all of the options that were in industry. And then, we had a lot of hard conversation about what it would look like to work with a partner outside of the industry. Those were the types of partners we'd had on our 2 previous failures.
Right.
And we found that their inability to understand NERDS and the NAR record system was really a critical issue and a critical failure, frankly. And their inability to build partnerships with the vendors that are required to play the game for these systems to work properly was also a challenge. And so while an out-of-industry partner might have had a proper tool, we were not sure that they had the right makings to be the right partner for us.
Yeah, and I think we worked together to arrive at that conclusion, even though we had a non-industry vendor that said, hey, we're willing to do this, and we got them to agree to all these integrations and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I think, from my perspective, at the end of the day, it came down to what's the experience that your staff wanted to have.
Yeah. And for me, it's who do I want to work with?
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time on these projects.
For sure.
And they're, especially given we were, in so much change last year already with the pandemic and the pivots in our business and all of the things. In some ways, you could have said it was the most terrible time to do this thing, but it was also a time where we could focus so collaboratively on this type of project that I don't think we could have done it any other time. But certainly doing it with people that we liked made it much more fun and made it just a way more collaborative experience overall.
Talk to me a little bit about how the business requirements impacted the project execution. Like we went and built all these business requirements, and then you selected the vendor.
Yeah.
How did the business requirements play a role once you got into execution?
Yeah, the truth about most associations and MLSs, frankly, is that we don't document anything properly. And so even ABoR had done some hard work to try to document processes internally. We had more documentation than most have.
Yes, you did.
But it was still not enough,
Yeah.
right? And it needed to be interpreted in a more professional manner in the way that you guys were able to create a work product there. But that work was really critical to understanding what we needed and then understanding how we were in turn going to build together what we were going to work from. So I don't see how we could have done this project without having first defined those business requirements properly. I definitely don't think that it would have been as good a work product at the end of the day if we didn't have that documentation to start from. And I think it's critical path for anybody that's going to make the transition to properly define what your expectations are. It was also quite helpful as it came to, negotiating the contract and managing, setting expectations around what we were really buying. We bought a product that didn't exist, which is probably insane, but did work out. And part of the security in doing that was that we had properly defined our expectations and were able to contractually manage against that. So that was another aspect of the business requirements documentation that in this project was really critical because of the stage the company was in.
Yeah, and I think that this particular software category, because there wasn't anything out there to meet your needs,
Right.
that was going to be, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to say, here's really what we need, and then be able to hold a vendor accountable to getting there.
I mean, really, truthfully, when we started working with you guys, and in the beginning, as we were thinking about what we were working towards, we thought we were working towards an ecosystem of products. I mean, I just never thought that there would be one platform that was going to do all of the things that my staff expected.
Yeah.
And the mama bear to them, I'm like, get them what they need, you know?
Yeah.
So we'll piece it together if that's what it takes. And so there again, I think that business requirements documentation in that mindset was even more critical.
Right.
You're piecing together all of these different vendors, all of these different players. Everybody's got to be on the same page about what we're doing. It turned out that we did find a one-stop solution, but that business requirements documentation would have been incredibly valuable in that other mindset too.
Talk to me about in terms of the outcomes. You guys have done the implementation. You've probably been on the platform for 4 or 5 months now. What happened once you got the product in place, and what sort of results have you seen so far?
Oh, I mean, we could talk about that for hours. But what happened was we all sighed a big sigh of relief that the damn thing existed.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, that we did it. We immediately started to understand our business differently. A lot of the work leading up to the transition was evaluating how we operate, the policies that we operate under, the expectations of our membership, how we had coddled them in the past, and changing expectations with them about how they needed to show up in the business. So much of it was just sort of seeing a whole culture shift in the organization too, not just the software, but the software driving really good business discussion. And so I think once it launched, we were operating in the way that we had custom designed our business to be, and it felt good.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shifts I observed in the change was really empowering the members to do more for themselves and not rely on, I have to call in, I have to get a support person to help me, I have to do that, because the software was that much easier for them to navigate themselves and to use.
But newsflash, realtors don't do that.
Yeah.
Here's the deal, right? I mean, they are empowered for those that learn and are adapting to that empowerment. They're excited about it and they're doing it. At the end of the day, even if my staff still does it and they still take 300 plus phone calls, they're still operating faster, more efficiently.
It's easier for them.
Correct. Yeah. It's really, there are less buttons to touch, less mistakes to be made. When things are automated, there's less human error involved, which results in a tighter, cleaner business overall as well.
Yeah, less frustration and more enjoyment of like, okay, I was able to actually do my job properly and was watching my back for a mistake I might have made.
Like playing in a system that is built on 10 years of mistakes, which is what we've been doing for a long time. So you're constantly just like firefighting in this cluster of bad data.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, a couple of questions about T360. What do you think was the best thing we did in this project for you? Or what was your favorite thing that we did for you?
The business requirements documentation was paramount to the success. So I think that was absolutely the right way for us to go. You delivered against our expectation beautifully. And that documentation will live with us, I think. If we're doing this properly, we revisit that occasionally and say, did we get what we wanted? Are there new things that we need now? That's an interesting pivot from our business then to now, whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's a living set of documentation.
It should be, yeah.
That's really great. Was there anything we could have done better? I'm always curious about how we can improve.
I mean, you charge me half as much if you want next time, but no, I mean, you guys do a great job. What I appreciate about always working with you is that I know I'm going to get shot straight, and I know that you're always going to give me your best judgment, and then you're still going to let us make the decision. I never feel like you're pulling us in a direction that we don't want to go. You were candidly concerned, about the fact that we were making an investment in a product that didn't quite exist yet, and appropriately, pointed that out to us, and then supported us as we decided to move forward. So I appreciate that you guys are always there and appropriately informed, but you allow us to make the decisions that we need to make as well.
That's great. Well, Emily, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about the project.
Yeah.
And I know we've got a little bit more conversation about it. So
You bet.
yeah, thanks.
You bet.